So how did the momentum go? We have discussed the different phases, Gandhiji participating actively, and all the stages of civil disobedience movement. Now how did the people react for this one? We have seen the different phases of the momentum, but let us now try to understand from different people's perspectives. Let us take the different classes of people and try to understand how did they feel about the civil disobedience movement. When we talk about the rich community people, the Patandars, the rich community people are always very active in the movement. So they want actually the Britishers to change the laws, to support the laws. They want them to reduce the revenue, the taxation system, because of these boycotts or because of the economic depression, the people are facing severe kind of problems and the economy has come down. So they want the reduction of the revenue. But in 1931, when the civil disobedience movement was being suspended, there was no promise made on the reduction of the revenue, and many of the people could not understand why the movement has been suspended. Later, when again in 1932 the civil disobedience movement has been restarted or reinitiated by Gandhiji, many of the rich community people, as they were not assured or they were not confirmed that these efforts will be done if they cooperate with Gandhiji, so they decided, most of the people, not to be part of active role. So that's how the rich community people, initially they were very active, but later on, because of the momentum got stopped and restarted again, people also lost confidence in this one. And when it comes to the poor people were not expecting just the reduction of the revenue or reduction of the taxation. They were actually expecting, because of the severe economic depression, loss of the crops, famines, droughts, and people participating in the civil disobedience movements, the money which they have to pay for the money lenders or the talukdars, the taxes are being increased. So this time they want a promise from the government side that they would not be given, or there will be a waive off of the taxes. There will be completely reduction of the taxes or no rent for the fields for what they are doing the cultivation. But somehow Congress party was not willing to get this kind of assurance from the Congress party side itself. There were no clear stands made by the Congress in assuring the people, especially the farmers, the peasants, the labor, that there will be a waive off of the rents, because Congress itself has been sidelining this issue, has been taking the U-turn on this point, and they never promised to the peasants that they are going to bring any kind of benefits for the peasants, those who are participating in the movement. So that's how the Congress also lost the support of the poor sections of the people. So the rich people are not satisfied because there was no reduction of the taxation, because they actively participated in the movement and they did the movement to be a very large movement, but the promise was not made. And when it comes to the poor people, they were initially expecting that at least for a brief period the taxation would be waived off, or there would be no rent collected at least for a timeline of 1 or 2 years because of the bad climatic conditions, droughts, famines, and reduction of the rupee value and the economic global crisis. All these factors also, but Congress party could not make any stand on whether the things are being to be reduced or at least to be considered. So this always made common people to be away from Congress. And the third one, the industrialists have started two major organizations, that is Indian Industrial and the Commercial Congress in 1920, and they also established the Federation of Chamber of Commerce Industry in 1927, which was participated, or the active members during this one was JD Birla Group, Patadars. All these people were very active during that time, and this is also one of the reason why the industrial workers could not take active part in the civil disobedience movement, because all the industrialists, all the rich people are always with the Congress. Congress never promised anything for the poor people, neither for the peasants nor for the workers. This is also one of the key factors why the industrial workers decided to stay away from the momentum, while the industrialists are always close to the Congress. These are some of the key factors which the Congress has to assign itself and recheck itself. Introspection has to be done. Why is the civil disobedience movement failed? And then the railway workers and the mine workers participated very actively. In 1930s, the railway workers with the Gandhi cap, they have denied to work in the dockyards, and at the same time the mine workers in the Chota Nagpur tin mine, they also showed their dissatisfaction towards the British rule, but they also participated very actively. And moving on to women role, women participated very actively. She moved off our traditional backdrop of the houses, they stepped outside, they participated actively in the Gandhiji's picketing of the wine shops or bonfires of the foreign goods, and they also participated in the Satyagraha movements and all these things. And it is a message given to women that it is a sacred cause. When a woman comes out and fights for a nation, it is a sacred cause. So yes, women have very actively participated in this movement, but the social status of women has not changed at any level. The social status has still remained in the same manner what it was prior to the women active participation. Today also it is in the same process. So somehow women also are being disassociated and there is no change in their social status. So the different levels of people have their own expectations from the civil disobedience movement. But actually Gandhiji intention was not to upset all these categories of people. Gandhiji, why did he stop the civil disobedience movement? We all have discussed it prior to this, that Gandhiji could not see the common people facing the troubles. More than 1 lakh satyagrahas were arrested. People were beaten up brutally. Women were being tortured. Children are being beaten up. And he did not think of the rich community people, what was their plan actually out of the civil disobedience movement. Where the rich community people were expecting that the reduction of the revenue would be there, the taxation would be reduced. Well, the poor peasants were expecting that there would be a waiving off of rents, a fee waiver, a tax waiver would be an added benefit. That, and when it comes to the industrialists have started their own organizations and always try to be very close in order to get the foreign laws which are banning them to have foreign trade has to be modified, and to have a check on the rupee sterlings. So all these things were not in the brain of Gandhiji while he was suspending the civil disobedience movement. The people have participated actively. The percentage of people participated in this movement are very good. But there are certain sections of people who are being denied completely. When Gandhiji suspended the movement, many of the people don't know what is the reason behind the suspension of the movement by Mahatma Gandhiji. And when again he restarted the movement, when we suspend a movement, we should achieve certain kind of promises or our targets have to be met clearly. But Gandhiji suspended because people are facing trouble. When again Gandhiji relaunched the movement, the people started to have a doubt on the movement, like why is the movement being started again and what are the consequences of this one. Without any promise also the movement can be suspended. And let us move on to check the other side of the civil movement or civil disobedience movement's negative impacts. What are the limitations of the civil disobedience movement? Let us discuss them in brief. Let us see here. Most of the people are being denied because in India we have more than 30% of people falling under the category of untouchables, Dalits, scheduled caste or scheduled tribes. We have a categorization according to the Hindu society of Manudharma Shastra. The people are being categorized broadly into 4 categories. 1, we have the Brahmins. 2, the Kshatriyas. 3, the Vaishyas. 4, the Sudras. As the timeline passed off from the 1st century to it came to the 20th century, the first 3 category people are considered as upper caste people, while the 4th category people are considered as lower caste people. These lower caste people come under the names of Dalits, scheduled caste, scheduled tribes. So this section of people are being completely denied from social well-being in the society. These people are not being allowed to enter into the temples, they are not being allowed to drink in the public wells, to participate in the public functions, to have a public dining, to move to the roads, public roads or schools where they are being completely banned in these places. So Gandhiji, after observing this untouchability in India, he gave a call, serious call to all the people saying that if untouchability is not being arrested now, even after 100 years also, we cannot achieve independence. So untouchability is a sin. Untouchability has to be stopped immediately. So Gandhiji called these Dalits or the scheduled caste people as Harijans, the people of the God, and he requested all the people to break all the social barriers and to have free intimacy with them by allowing them into the temples, public wells, tanks, roads and schools. So Gandhiji started to focus on the negative places where the movement has been failed. So Gandhiji initiated this process by calling the untouchables and Dalits as Harijans, the people of God. Later, the second major dysentery thing was when the people are being neglected like this, B.R. Ambedkar started an association of these Dalits and the backward classes people, and he wanted to have a representation of these people, and he also decided to have a separate electoral voting system for these people. In the second roundtable conference, he wanted to have this separate representation for the backward classes people so that that particular category of people can also develop and equate themselves with the other communities of people in the society. But with the news of Ambedkar's association, Gandhiji felt very bad because this is disintegrating the society. Instead of uniting the society is getting broken up into pieces. Gandhiji felt very bad and he started to do fasting unto death because this will slow down the process of unification of the nation, integration of the nation. This is a serious concern which has to be addressed in a different way. So finally, in 1932 September, Gandhiji went on fasting death. So B.R. Ambedkar came to a compromise with Gandhiji by signing the Pune Pact, in which there are certain special reservation of seats given in the general elections to the scheduled caste people. So that's how the pact came up in 1932, where the separate electoral voting process for the Dalits and the backward classes has been banned. Gandhiji and Ambedkar have serious negotiations on this and try to solve out the issue. The other section of people who are being completely neglected are the Muslims. The Muslims were initially very much in favor of Congress. As we have discussed earlier, the Congress started the non-cooperation movement aligning with the Khilafat movement. So Gandhiji's initial step was to align Hindus and Muslims together. But when the non-cooperation movement got suspended, the Khilafat movement also got automatically suspended. Why did Gandhiji suspend the non-cooperation movement? He did not take any concern from any of the Muslim leaders, either from Shaukat Ali or from Muhammad Ali. So this raised the anger of the people. And by 1930s, the Congress efforts to solve the disputes in 1928 went on failed. In 1930, Muhammad Ali Jinnah started to ask for a separate representation for the Muslim League, not with the Congress. They want a separate identity for the Muslims. And again, in 1928, when they tried to solve the issue, Mr. B.M.R. Jayakar, who was a Hindu Mahasabha leader, who opposed the views of the Muslim League and completely denied their allegations or their requisitions. This also raised the anger of the Muslims, and this completely disassociated the Muslims from the Indian Hindus, because we can't call them as Indian Muslims because they started to associate themselves from the Indian context, and this has given up for suspicion and distrust for the people, not only for Muslims, for the untouchables, for the Harijans, then for the Muslims. And Muslims also had a fear that Muslims are in minority in India, whereas the identity may be submerged by the Hindu majority. The minority group may lose their importance and their cultural values. So all these views are somehow which restricted the success of the civil disobedience movement. Let's have a brief recap of what happened, then we'll move on to the collective nationalism. So the rich people participated very actively initially in the movement. Their wish or their want is the reduce of revenue. They boycotted very actively. But when the movement got suspended, there was no promise made. And in 1932, when the movement was again relaunched, the people don't have any choice because they don't know why the movement has been suspended and what are the next step if the movement has been successful also. Next, no rent was initial expectation of the poor people, poor peasants who participated in the civil disobedience movement. But there also Congress failed to get an assurance for them, and they lost the support of these people when it was relaunched second time. Third group, the industrialists are also very active. They have started two organizations, Indian Industrial Commercial Congress in 1920 and the Federation Chamber of Commerce of Industries in 1927, initiating and expecting that the ban on the foreign imports and exports would be waived off and there would be a rupee sterling happening, but somehow Congress could not do that also. And industrial workers genuinely they stayed away from the Congress because industrialists are with the Congress. That's how when the industrialists are with Congress, industrial workers decided that we were not able to get any kind of benefits from this one. And the railway workers and the mine workers also participated actively at the Chota Nagpur tin mines and the dockyards of the railways, but they also were not benefited with anything. Women participated very actively and they were considered as they are playing a very sacred role by participating in the Indian national movement, but the social status of women was not changed even though they participated very actively. Let us move on to the limitations. The sections of people are being neglected. The untouchables, the Dalits, the scheduled caste people are being not only neglected from the movement but from the society also. They were not being given entry into the temples. They were not being given alone to the public wells, tanks, roads and schools. B.R. Ambedkar started an association in order to fill the gap and to bring the people united. But Gandhiji saw this move as it's a threat for the unification because we are asking for the bifurcation of the communities of the people, so that would disintegrate the unity. So the Pune Pact was signed in 1932 in September with certain special reservations given to the scheduled caste people. Muslims were also neglected. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the new turned leader, started to raise his voice to have a special representation for the Muslim League. But the efforts were made by the Congress, but they were stopped and opposed by the Hindu Mahasabha leaders like M.R. Jayakar. So these all created among the people the suspicion and distrust. None of the communities are clear or having clarity on what has to be done with the civil disobedience movement and what is the expectation of the momentum by Gandhiji. And they also had a doubt that Muslims, as they are in minority group, the culture and the identity would be submerged by the majority group of Hindus. So the non-cooperation movement and the Khilafat movement, don't get confused with the movements. The first movement, which was initiated by Mahatma Gandhiji on a large scale, was the non-cooperation movement, which was started in 1921 January. Along with the non-cooperation movement, in order to get the Muslims also together and make the Britishers to afraid that all Indians are united, so it is very difficult to control them. Automatically Britishers would decide to give freedom for the Indians. This is a base plan of Mahatma Gandhiji. So he joined the non-cooperation movement with the Khilafat movement in Jan 1921. So the first movement which was started by Mahatma Gandhiji is the non-cooperation movements. Many of the students get confused with the non-cooperation movement and the civil disobedience movement. The second movement which was started by Mahatma Gandhiji is civil disobedience movement. So the first movement on a larger scale was the non-cooperation movement. So Gandhiji started non-cooperation movement with the Muslims, getting them aligned together with the Khilafat movement against the Khalifa. Khalifa is not being recognized by the Britishers. He is not being given the recognition, authority or special place because he is the religious head of Islam communities. So now moving on to the context of non-cooperation movement. What does the non-cooperation movement do? In the non-cooperation movement, it is not the movement of only one section of people. The non-cooperation movement gathered all people from all corners of the society. Men, women, higher class, lower class, middle class, educated, uneducated, teachers, students, lecturers who are studying in the colleges, government schools, working in the government offices, lawyers, peons, Those who are being titled by the British government also surrendered their titles back, and people started to showcase their protest. So the sections of the people, the main people who have contributed are the middle class people, and all schools, colleges, lawyers, teachers, students, all boycotted the government function. The non-cooperation literally means that not to cooperate with the government. Gandhiji's ideology behind this one was to bring non-cooperation, to force the Britishers to accept the demands of the Indians. Initially, when Gandhiji suggested this non-cooperation movement with the title of Swaraj, the Congress party itself has different views. The Congress party, some people were in the favor of the momentum, while others want complete freedom or Purna Swaraj. So Gandhiji deliberately discussed with them and told them that initial process should be done like this, and altogether only we can do something. If we break up the party and if we do it differently, the effect will be very less, and it would be very easy for the Britishers to control this movement. So Gandhiji's words convinced most of the leaders. The alternative was brought up, the non-cooperative movement was started, and it went on to very huge level with a grand success. People from all corners of the society and all corners of the country got motivated with this one. And not only the colleges, schools, teachers, post offices, courts, lawyers in the courts, judges, police stations. So not only one section, different categories, different sections of people participated, different professionals participated, all were motivated towards the freedom struggle. So what they want is, they want completely freedom. And not only this, they banned all the foreign goods. The foreign goods are completely being banned. The foreign goods are brought outside and made as bonfires. And though the Swadeshi goods, the khadi cloth, is being costly also, people started to use all the Swadeshi products rather than using the Videshi products. And because of this, the trade, initially it used to be nearly 1 or 2 crore rupees. In 1921-22, it came down to 57 crore rupees. It was a drastic loss for the Britishers. So this impact started to fall on the economy of the British also. So slowly the anger of the people has been experienced by the Britishers. So the Britishers are trying their level best to control the momentum at various places. They want to terrorize the people to stop the momentum. They used various methods. They used various forces to control the people. But finally, are they able to control the people? How did the people react for the Britishers? The momentum of non-cooperation, how did it spread at the various towns we have seen? Now, the rebellion, how did people revolt in the countryside? The national momentum started to spread to various corners into the depth of the country, length and breadth. So the people started to understand it as a momentum to raise their anger against the Britishers, to showcase their dissatisfaction against the Britishers. So as the time came, the people, the peasants in Awadh are led by Baba Ramchandra. The peasants in Awadh are led by Baba Ramchandra, who was actually an intended laborer, a forced laborer who was sent to Fiji in the earlier period, who returned back safely, and he started the momentum, who was now basically a sannyasi, who motivated all the peasants to fight against the Britishers. So when he motivated all the peasants' problems were very huge in number. The landlords, the merchants, the talukadars used to force the peasants to work at them at very less cost or no cost, known as a system of beggar. So the beggar was forced by many peasants to work by the merchants, the talukdars. So they used to get huge profits while these people were forced to work for no income. This kind of things made the people to become day by day poorer and poorer. Those who were having a small piece of land also were forced to pay unnecessary taxes and unknown taxes actually for them under the different names, and these people used to pay them. They used to use their whole lands for the talukdars or the merchants or the existing landlords. So as the momentum went on, in June 1920, Jawaharlal Nehru visited the villages of Awadh. While he was moving on actively in the politics, he wanted to understand the actual problems of the peasants. So he went into the deeper parts of the villages and he understood by the ground reality what are the basic problems of the villagers. After understanding this one, they have set up peasant organizations which is not initially accepted by the Congress, but Jawaharlal Nehru was very much concerned with the problems, and Baba Ramchandra and Jawaharlal Nehru together started the leadership with few others, the peasantry movements. In these peasantry movements, the farmers used to attack all the merchants, all the talukdars. When the non-cooperation movement has stretched on to all over, Gandhiji's words are being misinterpreted by the farmers. They understood that Gandhiji told there is no need to pay any taxes. Gandhiji's words misunderstood. Why we say it is misunderstood is Gandhiji clearly told that he is against the ways of the Britishers' laws and the taxes, but he never said no taxes. And the other thing is, Gandhiji never said that he is going to redistribute the lands for the poor, or he never used the word peasantry at all in any of his moments. But the people, the farmers in the villages understood that Gandhiji told for us no taxes, so we would not pay any taxes. They went and attacked the houses of the talukdars, they went and attacked the house of the merchants, they destroyed their palaces, they occupied their lands, and they redistributed the lands for the landless poor by forceful methods, by violent methods. This is how where Gandhiji felt very much upset with the ideology of the villagers, because the actual words of Gandhiji are been completely misunderstood by the people of Awadh. And not only this, there was a rebellious momentum which has happened in Andhra Pradesh, that is happened at the hills of Gudem Hills, Gudem Hills in Andhra Pradesh, where the colonial country or the Britishers colonial government decided to close all the forest. When the colonial government decided to close all the forest, the tribals, those who are living on the forest only, those who consider the forest as their motherland, those who know only to cut the crops or to do business only with the forest, things like collecting the fruits, collecting the honey and bringing it to the city and selling it, so collecting the various leaves and doing business with this one. So other than this, they don't know anything. So if this is being enforced, if the Britishers are going to close all the forests and the entry of the people has been restricted, it is going to be a life threat for the people of the tribal community. So they need some alternative for this one. And at the same time, Britishers forced the tribal community people to work as a beggar for laying down the roads. So they were also forced for beggar to lay down the roads. During this time, the leader of the tribal community is Alluri Sita Ramaraju. Alluri Sita Ramaraju emerged as the leader. People initially used to believe that he had some special powers. He had some inclination to the incarnation, and he used to heal people even if they were been booted with the bullets, even if they have been hit with the bullets or arrows. He also used to say the revelations like future tense, what would be his predictions, and most of his predictions are almost true many of times. And people started to believe him that he is having some special powers. He is having some connection with the god. He is one of the avatars of the god. Like that, the tribal people started to praise him and got well connected with him. Sitaram Raju, who was basically influenced by the non-cooperation movement of Gandhiji, also praised about Gandhiji and told that Gandhiji's ideologies are very good and excellent, but in order to get independence for us, in order to fight the Britishers, the best way is to use the violent methods, to destroy the police stations, to attack the police stations, and to kill the British officials. That's what the message he spread to the people in the Gudem villages, and the tribal people used to attack the police stations and kill the British officials. Like this, he terrorized the people in the Andhra region, especially near the Gudem region. But after a certain period, in 1924, Ramaraju was being captured and he was executed publicly. But still, the inspiration has lived a lot. This is how the momentum of non-cooperation, which Gandhiji initially wanted to have a very peaceful moment, but later on, the stage by stage, it started to become violent and more violent. So let's see what happened for this in the plantation regions. How did the non-cooperation movement has been taken by the workers in the plantations? Swaraj in plantations. The non-cooperation movement, Swaraj in plantations, is another side. We discussed before this that how the momentum has been taken up in the towns, later on by the peasants and the villages. As the time passed on now, we are moving on to a very far off place in the northeast. It would be really that we can appreciate the momentum spread to a very large region actually. Because during those times, we don't have any fast, rapid movies or channels to communicate the information. It's only through the radios and the newspapers the information has to be passed on. But the Gandhiji has been an inspiring person, not only in some parts of North India, but the entire India. So now when we discuss the Swaraj in plantations, the actual meaning of the word Swaraj has been taken as freedom by the people, those who are working in the plantations. So for them, freedom means to move freely. And you may get a doubt. So what is the great difference here? Moving freely is obviously allowed everywhere. The people, those who are working in the plantations, do not have any freedom to move freely. They are not allowed to move out of the plantation. Very rarely they are being given permission to move out of the working plantations. That is a very difficult task. Means they were forced to work whole along the month, whole along the year. That is the working condition here. This is according to the Inland Immigrants Law of 1859. So according to this law or this act, the people, those who are working in a plantation, are not at all allowed to go outside. Very rarely they are being given permission to move out of the plantation. Even if they try to ask permissions also, they are being denied. But as soon as they heard the Gandhiji's non-cooperation movement of Swaraj concept, they all people betrayed their rulers. They all people showed their anger and decided that we can now go freely to whatever place we want. And they also misunderstood that according to Gandhi's philosophy, they are going to give lands for the landless poor people in their own respective villages. So we need not stay here. So they all started to move out freely without listening to anybody. They moved outside completely. They started headed towards their own villages. In their way, the railway has been in strike. The steamer workers are being in strike. So in all places, as people are showing their non-cooperation movement, the peasant workers, those who are working in the Assam plantations, could not move outside of the places. So finally, the police people entered there and they were beaten up brutally. This is the fact which has been happened. But the actual meaning of a non-cooperation movement, which was not being defined by the Congress, went on to very untold phases. The people in the north understood it differently, the peasants understood it differently, the tribals understood differently. In the south, Andhra people understood it to be violent methods, and in the northeastern part, people understood they are going to get freedom. So Gandhi Raj is going to come for us. the British Raj is going to end up for them. So these all inclinations, these all changes, the actual motto of Gandhiji was to move on with a peaceful and non-violent methods, but all people in all walks went on going on to somehow the other way into a violent means, because they were not being guided properly, it is not being described properly, it is not being explained properly by the Congress party. However, Congress was not happy with how the movement has been went on. So in this moment, or in this context of Gandhiji initiating the process of non-cooperation movement, we have discussed how the Gandhiji has stepped in to the Indian politics. How did he reach to all corners of people by moving to Bihar, by moving to Ahmedabad, by moving to various other places and solving their problems by doing the Satyagraha agitation and making the people to understand what is Satyagraha, the power of the truth. Then you need not be violent. Automatically the power of the truth will make you to be victorious. This ideology made the people to understand it very clearly, but during that time only we have the Khilafat movement raised by the Muslims. So Gandhiji wanted to bring Hindus and Muslims under the same umbrella. So he started the non-cooperation movement plus Khilafat movement in Jan 1921. After he started the movement, it went on to different stages. Even Gandhiji could not able to control this one, because the words of Gandhiji have been misunderstood by different people at different levels. It was, let us take the example of peasants in Awadh. They destroyed the houses of the merchants, they destroyed the house of the landlords, they destroyed the house of the talukdars, and they have made them to be in trouble. Sometimes they even killed them also. When we come to the Gudem people in Andhra region, where they understood that the militant action only is required, we need to blast the police officials, we need to kill the British officials. This is how the people in South understood. When we went on to the Northeast, in Assam, where the people are working in the plantations, there the people understood that they got complete freedom. So Gandhiji told us not to follow any rules of the British Raj. So Gandhi Raj is going to come. So we will move out of the plantations. We will not work under any of the British officials. Land will be redistributed for the landless poor people in their own villages. So they started to head towards their own houses. This is how the momentum has got changed the entire shape to another shape. But the interesting fact is, let us take the peasants of Awadh or the Gudem people or the workers in the plantations. All use the word Swatantra Bharat. All want freedom. All were connected with the ideology of one nation, Indians. This is how the momentum created oneness among all sections of people. As we have seen the different moments, the different rising of the people, how the non-cooperation movement went on, how the civil disobedience movement went on, what are the positives, what are the negatives, what were the reactions of the people. But on a larger scale, somehow, though we have different groups, the diverse culture, diverse population, the sense of collectiveness, the sense of one nation, belongingness started to emerge in the people in the later half of the 20th century. That's how the sense of collective belonging has been established. The first concept which has been established is part of the same nation. All people are facing the same problems by the same ruler. That made them to feel that they all are part of the same nation, and that's how the concept of nationalism got to evolved out in India. And as the nationalism got evolved out in India, because these people are always facing the united struggles, these people are always facing the same common enemy which brought them all together under the single umbrella to face the common difficulties, and that's the base for the establishment of nationalism. And later on, it's not only the problems but the history and the fiction, the stories, the common cultures, the binding attitudes, common values, folk songs, folklores, dance, paintings, symbols, all have contributed to the larger extent for the people to get associated with each other, to understand each other in a better way than the previous years. And Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, who started to initiate the process of Vande Mataram after the Swadeshi movement, before the Swadeshi movement, these songs, the Bhakti Bharat Mata's visual images are being created in order to make the people to understand that we all have certain images, we all belong to a particular nation, we all have a common song, we all have the common attitudes, common values. And when Rabindranath Tagore has started to give a picture of Bharatamata, for the first time he used the word Bharatamata. And not only this, Rabindranath Tagore also described Bharatamata or portrayed the picture of Bharatamata with the certain qualities. The certain qualities are aesthetic sense, to look her to have a pleasant grace, calm, who is very obedient, and composed, a complete woman, a complete Indian representative, divine, having the glorious divine nature, and spiritual context. So these all features also were added for the image of Bharatamata, so that all would get connected to this. And he himself also contributed by collecting the ballads. He started to use the nursery rhymes, myths, folk stories to get the folk revival and to make the people to understand more better, because in a country like India where more than 70% of the people are illiterates, so we need to have a common medium of instruction for them. So we cannot just expect them to read newspapers, participate in the movement so actively and understand everything. So Rabindranath Tagore has initiated to give some images through some songs, through some poems, through some myths, through some stories, through some folk songs and folk dances. We can communicate the issues to a larger community of people. Day by day, the issue went on spreading, not only in eastern part of India, but also in southern part of India. In Madras Presidency, we have Natesha Shastri, who has released 4 volumes on Tamil folk tales. The Tamil folk tales are named as the folklore of South India, where the South Indian people got connected to this one. So they started to establish and united themselves with the culture of India. And later on, the Swadeshi movement itself initiated the tricolor flag, where we have one national flag, one national song, the anti-British song, and then we have the crescent moon, the half moon, which is symbolizing the Hindus as well as the Muslims. Then we have in 1921 Gandhiji designed the Swaraj flag to have in the independent India. So not only this, the efforts are made by the leaders, the efforts are made by the poets, the efforts are being initiated. People themselves started to understand the problems. People themselves started to identify what are their common issues, why are we facing this kind of problems, what is the possible solutions for this one. And later on, people also try to understand what is history, the interpretation of the history. If Britishers feel us that we are not educated, we are primitive, we are uncivilized, uncultured, then why did they step into India? What is India actually? India has achieved great milestones in science, in maths, in culture, in religion, in the economic growth. The prosperous kingdoms have been flourished in India. Britishers also have come to India to earn money only. So everybody started to understand the past glory of India, and they started to get connected to the past culture, past systems, and then they understood that the common enemy is none other than the colonial master. So this is how the movement went on to people and to gather all people to come together. The Congress party, in the conclusion we can put it like this: the Congress party always tried to have a proper channel to showcase the dissatisfaction of the people in a single outlet, where it has brought all the dissatisfaction points to a very large level close. But precisely within the Congress and out of the Congress, we have some elements, some people who are disintegrated and who have broke the unity of the movement. But still, the Congress always tried to settle down the issues possibly and try to bring them unitedly to fight against the common enemy, the British rule. And in larger context, everybody meant different freedom according to different people. For example, for business people, it meant different issue. For the colonial workers, it was a different one. For the peasants, it was a different one. But ultimately, everybody want freedom for India. In other words, we can say that the people have raised their voices, in different voices have been raised ultimately to achieve the freedom of India. That's how Gandhiji has been initiated the process of the freedom movement in India till that time we don't have a common leader to bind the people of India to fight against the mighty British Empire. But slowly, even though the initial moments have been failed, like the non-cooperation movement, the civil disobedience movement, but later on, Gandhiji was very successful, and finally he headed the nation to attain its independence on 15th of August 1947. So the nationalism has been playing a very major role in India achieving its independence. Though there are people who are not actively participating because of their personal issues or community issues like the Dalits or like the Muslims, but still Congress party has tried all its efforts to reduce the ununity among the people and to channelize the outbreak in a single point so that the Britishers can be destroyed and the British rule can be ended up in India. As we already discussed about the different phases of the freedom movement and how Gandhiji intervened into the Indian politics, after he had studied the various ground realities, he went on to various corners of India to understand the situations. Later, he got the idea about the mass struggles. He initiated the process of non-cooperation movement. So during the non-cooperation movement, he decided to do what is necessary, and he wanted to unite Hindus as well as the Muslims with the non-cooperation movement getting interconnected with the Khilafat movement. So now what happened after that? The non-cooperation movement was misunderstood by different people at different corners. We have seen how the people have reacted for this one in the southern region, where Sita Ramaraju in the Gudem hills of Andhra has brought militant agitation, but he was inspired by Gandhiji's non-cooperation movement. And in the Assam region in the northeast, people decided that British Raj has gone away, Gandhi Raj is going to come. So that also moved into a violent action. So when it moved on completely into violent action, Gandhiji was completely upset with the attitude of the people. The actual strength of Gandhiji is satyagraha with a non-violent method. But here people restored themselves to violent methods and attitudes. So with the uprising of the non-cooperation movement to a very large extent, but it was not successful according to Mahatma Gandhiji. So Gandhiji in February 1922 decided to withdraw non-cooperation movement. His idea is to withdraw the non-cooperation movement because as he appealed to all people in all ways that we should be peaceful and we should do the agitation in a peaceful manner. We are not supposed to break any of the laws. This is in context with the non-cooperation movement. But as the time passed on, Gandhiji was unable to control the movements of the people, and those people are also taking the name of Gandhiji and restoring to violence. This is what something which upset Gandhiji seriously. But as the time passed on, he could not do anything. On February 1922, Gandhiji decided to shut or stop the non-cooperation movement. So now the people who already participated in the movement were, let us take the peasants, let us take the mill workers, industrial workers, or various people who willingly participated in this one, are expecting some kind of assurance from the government that they would not be troubled by the government. But with the abrupt suspension of the momentum, the people were confused. The leadership could not give any promise for the people. At the same time, people are also don't know what are the reasons why the movement has been suspended. So this kind of confusion was already moved into the people as soon as the momentum was stopped. But during this time only, according to the act which was passed by the Government of India Act of 1919, the people also want to participate in the elections, to have a proper election system, and so that we can have our representatives in the councils. when these provincial councils will discuss about the policy matters, they can put our words there. That's how the people thought during that time, and some of the leaders want to participate in the elections, though some of the major leaders argued that it was completely non-democratic and the voting is being given only for 1% of the people. So this 1% of the people are very minute sections of the Indian community. So it is only for namesake elections. The real powers are vested with the Britishers only. So this is how people call this one as a non-democratic or undemocratic system of elections. Whatever it is, the Indians have decided, some of the leaders, to go into the provincial assemblies, to raise our voices in the assemblies so that it can be heard to the higher authorities, rather than being outside of the assemblies and shouting, let us be part of the councils and try to stop something. That's how they have planned initially. This went on like this way. And when we move on to the other side, we have C.R. Das and Motilal Nehru, who have initiated the Swaraj Party. So these people want to participate in the elections, while the other group, Jawaharlal Nehru and Bose, are radical and they want to go for mass agitations. And this has been a serious topic of discussions in the Indian politics during that time. Congress has suspended the non-cooperation movement under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhiji. Motilal Nehru, the father of Jawaharlal Nehru, and C.R. Das have independently established a Swaraj Party, where they want to contest in the provincial elections or the council elections, where some of the people have seriously argued that these are the non-democratic elections. So Congress was not interested to participate in this. And in the Congress also, we have a split, that is Jawaharlal Nehru and Bose taking the side to be a radical and a serious mass agitation, not believing in the peaceful methodology, but we need to have huge number of people participating in the elections, and not only in the elections, to trouble the government, to force the government to make them to be independent. This is what the ideology, what they believed. And other than these two factors, the other factors which influenced the Indian politics during that time were the World War I, the effect or the impact of World War I. World War I was the first major man-made disaster which the human mankind has experienced. It has been fought for nearly 4 years, from 1914 to 1918. During these 4 years, except a few islands in Pacific Ocean and in South America, remaining all countries in the world are being affected seriously by this war. So the influence made Indians, being a British India country, where we are forced to send our people to the war. There were forced recruitments for the World War, and also the agriculture has come down, the fields are being destroyed, continuous droughts, famines, people have lost their lives, many people were upset with the agricultural pattern. So all these things made the people to have poverty, and this also affected the Indian economic system as well as the political system. During this time only, the effect of World War I was initially subsided or surfaced by the efforts made by the Britishers, and later on it became to be a global economic depression, which impact became very large in India. In India, north and south, east and west, everywhere we had the lack of rainfall, the severe famines, droughts, heavy taxation, and all these made the people to get scared of living, and these people are struggling to get certain alternative for this one. This is how the people started to motivate themselves to fight against the Britishers, and during that time only we have the leaders taking up the charges at different levels and different parties. During this growing anger of the people, the Britishers were able to estimate the anger of the people, and they decided to send a solution for this one by sending Sir John Simon. Sir John Simon, a commission was headed by him. He came to India. He initially started in 1927 in England, but during those times they have to travel by ships, so it took nearly more than 2 months for them to come to India. So finally, by the time they reached India, it became 1928. He started in 1927 December, so he reached in 1928 Jan. So by that time, it is in 1928 in some of the books. In some of the books, it is mentioned as 1927. Both are right. Now, when Simon Commission came, the Simon Commission has all the representatives who are the representatives of the British officials. There is no one who knows either Hindi, or there is no one who is having Indian origin. There is no one, an Indian representative there. So how can a Simon Commission be coming to India without having an Indian representative, and none of them knowing the Indian languages to understand the problems of the Indians, to communicate with the Indians, to facilitate the Indians to have a better nation, or to merge towards the independent nation? So this seriously upset the people of India, Indian leaders and Indian masses. So altogether, they came up in a big rallies when Simon came to India with the slogans called Simon Go Back. The Simon Go Back slogan was being given seriously at all places wherever the Simon Commission tried to visit them. So this is how people have started to show their anger towards the Britishers. Looking at the growing anger of the Britishers, Lord Irwin had made a vague promise. The promise is that he would give a dominion status to India in October 1929. So when I call it a vague is something like which may be real or may not be real, which may happen or may not happen, or we are not sure when it is going to happen. These kind of promises are called as vague promises. The dominion status has been assured, but when, nobody knows. So when they told that the dominion status has to be assured, Gandhiji was not satisfied with the promise which was made by Lord Irwin, because this kind of vague promises were always made to make their issues soften and to try to get the support of the Indian masses. But Gandhiji truly believed that we should want a consolidated and a concrete promise made by the Britishers with a fixed timeline. Otherwise, we cannot believe the Britishers. That is the reason why the first roundtable conferences were suspended by the Indian political leaders, especially headed by Gandhiji. So in 1929, Jawaharlal Nehru and the team decided to have Purna Swaraj at the Lahore session, and they declared that 26th Jan 1930 will be the date of Republic India, where all the Indians are going to dream that it is a natural inherent right of the Indians to be a part of free India but not a part of British India. So this is how the momentum started to take its own shape to emerging into Swatantra Bharat or free independent India. The sequence is a bit confusing, but we need to remember this one carefully. In February 1922, Gandhiji has understood how the non-cooperation movement went on out of the control of the leaders, because Gandhiji's main ideology was Satyagraha and Ahimsa, but these two were misunderstood by the people, and always whenever they do violence, whenever they attacked some people, they always used to take the name of Gandhiji and restore to do violence there. And that is the reason why which seriously upset Gandhiji, and that is why he decided to withdraw the non-cooperation movement. When Gandhiji decided to withdraw the non-cooperation movement with the failure of the ideology of understanding of Gandhiji's philosophy, many of the masses, peasants, workers, agricultural labor, all these people could not get any kind of fair promises either by the Congress party or by the British officials that they would not be collected any taxes from them, or they would not be asked to repay back any kind of loans which are being taken by them because of a failure of the agriculture or famines, droughts. But this is what something seriously upset the masses of the Indians. Gandhiji was upset with the behavior of the people, and people were upset because they were not sure why the movement has been suspended and what would be the consequences of this suspension of the movement. And during that time only, the elections has been initiated here with the law of Government of India Act 1919. Some of the leaders criticize this one as it is a non-democratic one, or it is completely not democratic at all, because the percentage of the people are given right to vote is very less, 1% of people. And C.R. Das and Motilal Nehru had established the Swaraj party, where they want to participate in the council of elections and want to have their say when the policy making is going on, rather than after the policies are being made, then when we try to attack them. Because when we see the example of Rowlatt Act, the Rowlatt Act was passed, though there was a serious opposition from the Indian Council of Members that Rowlatt Act should not be passed, but they have passed the act. So if we have more number of people in the council where we can oppose the laws that cannot be passed, that's why they want to increase the strength in the council, so that it can assure them that any kind of anti-Indian people interest laws cannot be passed there. But Jawaharlal Nehru and Bose want to do a mass agitation, same like the non-cooperation movement, and make it a very large one, so that it may force the Britishers to leave India and understand that they cannot control further any more time to depend on the support of the Britishers. So we can fight against them. We can show that we can fight against them. That's what they were. The young and dynamic leaders, Jawaharlal Nehru and Bose, want to go for mass agitations. They are a radical group leaders. But as Gandhiji suspended the movement, Motilal Nehru and C.R. Das had a separate party, Jawaharlal Nehru going with the other inclinations. So this was a serious debate in the Indian politics during that time. So finally the deliberations were being made, a common conclusion was being brought out, and in 1920s the other side of the coin is that world was being witnessed the World War I and had many problems during that time, because the entire economy for 4 years has been drained in the war fields. There is no return from that fields, and the loss was in huge number. So in order to get back from that loss and to solve the depression, they were not able to understand what would be the possible solution for this one. And later on, this World War's economic drain has shown the entire world the greatest economic depression in the world in 1929. Because of this greatest economic depression in the world, even in India also, the agricultural production has come down, the cost of the production has come down, the exports have been come down, the cotton textile cost has been come down. So everything has been come down. Financially, people have become weak. Indian financial system also has become weak. The amount of contribution towards the Britishers also has put down completely. And then Sir John Simon Commission was been established to look after or to take the opinions of the people of India. The interesting fact about this is that in the Sir John Commission team or Sir John Simon team, we don't have anyone from India. All are from the Britishers. None of them can understand Hindi. So that's what people were completely upset when they are coming to a Hindu land where none of them can understand the language of Hindi. How can they understand the problems of the native Indians, and how are they going to decide the future of the Indians? So they came up seriously with the slogans of Simon Go Back in 1928. Looking at this growing dissatisfaction and the moves of the people, Lord Irwin promised to give a dominion status, but the promise was completely a vague promise, because there was no certain timeline when can the promise be fulfilled. So Gandhiji was upset with the vague promises, and he wanted a concrete and a specific timeline based promise. And in 1929, Jawaharlal Nehru, under the leadership of Jawaharlal Nehru, they came up with a pure and complete independent momentum with the name called Purna Swaraj. This was finalized at Lahore session on 26th of Jan 1930, which clearly showed the interest of the people that everybody wants India to fight for complete freedom, and we don't want any constitutional freedom or limited freedom aspects. We don't want any certain rights which are granted for the Indians. We want complete freedom. We want to rule ourselves by our own elected leaders, not by somebody who has been nominated by the Britishers.